Success often arrives with applause and invisible strings attached. The higher the recognition, the greater the pressure to fit the image that recognition creates. In American culture, we celebrate achievement, but we rarely talk about what it costs to maintain autonomy once the spotlight turns on. For many professionals over 45, this tension feels familiar. You build something meaningful, earn respect, and then discover that expectations can quietly narrow your freedom. Michelle Phillips' career embodies this enduring conflict. Fame elevated her, but control was never guaranteed. Her journey is less about celebrity and more about authorship, who shapes the narrative, who sets the direction, and who ultimately decides what success means. If you value stories about career identity rather than gossip, stay with this conversation. Every defining career has a moment when talent meets timing. For Michelle Phillips, that moment came with the emergence of the Mamas and the Papas in the mid-1960s, a group that did more than climb the charts. It captured the emotional temperature of a changing America. The folk rock movement was expanding beyond coffee houses and protest songs into mainstream radio. The British invasion had reshaped expectations. Youth culture was becoming commercially powerful. In that environment, harmony-driven groups were not just musical acts, they were cultural symbols. When California Dreamina and later Monday became national hits, the breakthrough was immediate and undeniable. The group earned Grammy recognition and secured prime television exposure. Doors opened quickly. But breakthroughs are rarely neutral. Recognition defines you as much as it elevates you. Michelle Phillips was introduced to America not simply as a singer, but as part of a carefully perceived image, the California blonde, ethereal, modern yet accessible. In a decade where visual identity began to matter as much as sound, this public framing was powerful. It made the group marketable. It made her visible. And visibility creates expectation. Within the structure of the band, creative leadership centered heavily around John Phillips' songwriting. The commercial success validated that hierarchy. When a formula works, industries tend to preserve it. In the 1960s recording business, still largely male-dominated in executive power, decision-making authority often followed authorship and production control. Michelle's recognition grew alongside the group's success, but structural control over direction did not automatically follow that recognition. For audiences over 45, this dynamic may sound strikingly familiar. You work hard. You contribute meaningfully. You help build something that succeeds. And yet, the credit structure, decision-making power, and long-term authority may not align evenly with contribution. Early career breakthroughs can cement you into roles that are profitable, but limiting. That is the paradox of first success. It validates you publicly while quietly narrowing your professional identity. The Mamas and the Papas' rise was swift. Festival appearances, national tours, and media attention followed. The group's harmonies became part of the cultural soundtrack of a generation navigating social upheaval and generational change. In that moment, Michelle Phillips was not just performing, she was embodying an era. But when identity fuses with public expectation, the cost is subtle. The industry begins to treat you as an element within a brand rather than an autonomous creator. Many Americans who built long careers understand this psychological shift. The first promotion, the first major contract, the first public recognition. It feels like a rival until you realize it also sets the terms for how others see you moving forward. For Michelle Phillips, the breakthrough was both artistic validation and structural positioning. It opened national visibility and financial opportunity. It also anchored her within a system where authorship and authority were unevenly distributed. Success is rarely a single event. It is an arrangement, and arrangements carry power dynamics. As we move forward in this analysis, consider your own first defining moment. Did it expand your autonomy? Or did it shape expectations that followed you for decades? If this tension resonates, stay with the story. Fame does not simply expand your audience, it narrows your margin for error. By the mid-1960s, the Mamas and the Papas were no longer just recording artists, they were fixtures of American pop culture. Television appearances, magazine profiles, and relentless touring intensified public visibility. In that era, media narratives were less fragmented than today. A handful of major outlets shaped national perception. Once an image was established, it was remarkably difficult to alter. Michelle Phillips became associated with a specific cultural archetype: California ease, bohemian elegance, harmony within a glamorous collective. The success of the group made that image commercially valuable. But commercial value often resists change. The pressure was not simply to perform well, it was to remain consistent with the version of oneself that audiences had embraced. This is the quiet risk of early fame. When the public connects deeply with one version of you, reinvention can feel like betrayal, even when growth is necessary. Within the band, internal tensions became increasingly visible. At one point, Michelle was dismissed from the group during a period of conflict, only to be reinstated later. Publicly, this signaled instability. Privately, it underscored how fragile positioning can be when authority structures are uneven. Being a recognizable face does not guarantee narrative control. Many Americans who built long careers understand the unease of being evaluated not as a whole person, but as a role. The manager, the executive, the specialist, the dependable one. Once defined, it becomes difficult to renegotiate identity without risk. Many Americans who built long careers understand how quickly reputation can shift when internal conflict becomes public. Years of contribution can be overshadowed by a single chapter that others interpret for you. For Michelle Phillips, the challenge was not only surviving the band's internal fractures but preventing those fractures from permanently defining her professional identity. The easy narrative would have reduced her to former member or disruption within the group. Instead, her reinstatement and continued participation in high-profile performances demonstrated strategic endurance. She did not publicly wage battles over authorship. She remained visible, continued performing, and preserved association with the group's peak cultural impact. That is not passivity. It is positioning. Strategic positioning sometimes means knowing when not to escalate conflict in public view. In the 1960s entertainment industry, reputation could be permanently altered by industry whispers. Maintaining composure, continuing to show up, and allowing the work to speak carried long-term advantage. There is also a broader industry context. Female artists during that period were often framed through relational narratives rather than individual authority. To sustain credibility beyond that framing required patience and selective assertion rather than constant confrontation. Fame can trap you in a single chapter. But it can also be leveraged as a platform for future movement if you manage perception carefully. Michelle Phillips' navigation of that period suggests an understanding that long careers are not won through every battle. They are shaped through cumulative positioning. If you have ever had to protect your professional identity while working within imperfect systems, this tension may feel familiar. And as we continue, the question becomes clearer: how do you expand control without abandoning the platform that made you visible? Stay with the analysis. The most decisive form of control is not confrontation, it is expansion. When the mamas and the papas began to lose commercial momentum at the close of the 1960s, Michelle Phillips faced a familiar professional crossroads: remain identified with a single era, or build a second act. The American entertainment industry has always rewarded reinvention selectively. Some artists become permanently associated with one cultural moment. Others leverage that moment as leverage for diversification. Michelle chose diversification. Her transition into acting was not a vanity extension of celebrity, it was a structural repositioning. Film and television required different disciplines, different gatekeepers, and different evaluation standards. Instead of operating inside a band hierarchy shaped by songwriting authority, she entered a performance-based environment where casting decisions, screen presence, and adaptability mattered more than group dynamics. That shift altered the power equation. In music, she had been one component of a defined collective brand. In acting, she competed as an individual professional. The move required auditions, smaller roles, gradual credibility building. It was not instantaneous dominance. but it redistributed agency. Success in one medium does not automatically guarantee authority in another, yet it provides negotiating leverage. For many Americans over 45, this moment resonates deeply. There comes a time when staying inside your original lane limits long-term autonomy. Promotions plateau. Titles harden. Expectations calcify. The only way to regain flexibility is to expand skill sets or shift industries entirely. Repositioning carries risk. It also rebalances control. Michelle Phillips' acting career throughout the 1970s and beyond, including roles in film and recurring television appearances, demonstrated a deliberate refusal to be frozen in the image of 1967. She was no longer solely the harmony singer in a folk rock quartet. She became a working actress with a portfolio. That matters psychologically. When professionals expand roles, they are not just adding income streams. They are protecting identity from reduction. The danger of early fame, or early success in any field, is becoming a historical artifact rather than an evolving participant. By moving into acting, Michelle avoided being solely a nostalgic figure of the 1960s. She maintained relevance in changing decades. The American industry landscape shifted dramatically in the 1970s and 1980s. New genres emerged. Television expanded. The ability to adapt across mediums became a survival strategy. Autonomy increases when dependency decreases. In a band, commercial viability depends on collective stability. In film and television, while still collaborative, the professional unit is more individualized. A performer can accept or decline roles. Representation can be renegotiated. Career arcs can be diversified. For audiences who have built long careers, this reflects a core truth: long-term independence often requires stepping outside the structure that first validated you. Expansion is rarely comfortable. It demands humility, returning to audition rooms, proving capability in new environments, facing comparison. But expansion also dilutes the power of any single gatekeeper. Michelle Phillips' second act illustrates a strategic understanding of longevity. She did not publicly sever ties with her musical legacy. She allowed it to remain part of her resume. But she refused to let it be the entirety of her professional identity. That is the essence of career control, not erasing the past, but refusing to be confined by it. In the American professional psyche, autonomy is rarely granted outright. It is accumulated through diversification, resilience, and the willingness to build again after the first peak. Longevity is rarely about staying at the center of attention. It is about knowing when to recalibrate. As the cultural intensity of the 1960s faded and the original wave of the mamas and the papas passed into history, Michelle Phillips entered a different professional phase, one less defined by chart dominance and more by steady presence. That shift was not accidental. It reflected personal and professional prioritization. The late 1960s brought divorce, the dissolution of the group, and significant change in the entertainment landscape. Instead of attempting to recreate the exact conditions of earlier fame, she chose continuity over spectacle. Acting roles continued. Television appearances expanded. Her career did not hinge on recapturing a single cultural moment. That decision matters. Sustainable fame requires accepting that peak visibility is temporary. The American public often equates relevance with intensity. But professionals over 45 understand a different truth: endurance depends on pacing. Michelle Phillips aged in public view, but without aggressive reinvention campaigns or public battles for attention. She remained associated with the legacy of her music while continuing to work in television and film across decades. That balance preserved credibility. Nostalgia can be a trap when it becomes the only currency. She used it as foundation, not confinement. Personal priorities also shift over time. Parenthood, financial stability, and professional independence all shape long-term decisions. While specific motivations remain private, observable career patterns indicate selectivity. Her work in recurring television roles provided continuity without overexposure. That form of steady engagement often reflects a deliberate desire for sustainability rather than volatility. For many Americans who have built families while sustaining careers, this stage resonates deeply. There comes a period when ambition is measured differently. Visibility may give way to stability. Expansion may give way to consolidation. The entertainment industry is notoriously unforgiving to women as they age. Public image, once celebrated, becomes scrutinized. Yet Michelle Phillips maintained a professional presence across multiple decades without dramatic public implosion or forced disappearance. That outcome suggests strategic calibration, choosing projects that aligned with evolving industry realities rather than resisting them. Aging in public view requires composure. It requires resisting the pressure to compete with one's younger self. Sustainable careers in any field follow this principle. You cannot outrun time, but you can reposition within it. The temptation after early fame is either to cling to former glory or withdraw entirely. She did neither. Instead, she allowed her legacy to coexist with ongoing work. Occasional reunions and retrospective recognition tied her to cultural history, while acting roles sustained active participation. For professionals watching this arc, the lesson is subtle but powerful. Autonomy in later career stages often comes from selective engagement rather than constant expansion. Personal recalibration does not signal retreat. It signals maturity. Michelle Phillips' trajectory illustrates that sustainable fame is less about dominance and more about durability. It is the difference between being consumed by a single era and integrating that era into a broader life narrative. And for those who have navigated decades of responsibility, reinvention, and recalibration, that durability may feel like the most meaningful form of control. Michelle Phillips' career invites us to reconsider how we define success in American culture. Her story is not one of uninterrupted dominance, nor is it a cautionary tale of collapse. It is something more nuanced, a case study in managing early success, negotiating autonomy inside collaborative structures, and building a professional life that survives cultural shifts. Managing success requires more than talent. Early recognition can be intoxicating, but it also sets terms. In the mid-1960s, the mamas and the papas became part of the national soundtrack. That breakthrough placed Michelle Phillips at the center of a cultural moment. But as we've seen, success inside a group does not automatically translate into full creative control. Industries reward contribution, yet they often consolidate authority elsewhere. For many Americans who rose quickly in their careers, this dynamic feels familiar. The first promotion, the first public win, can quietly define you in ways that are both empowering and limiting. Protecting autonomy, then, becomes an ongoing discipline. Michelle's temporary dismissal and return to the group revealed how fragile positioning can be when power structures are uneven. Her later transition into acting reflected a strategic understanding that autonomy increases when dependency decreases. Rather than contesting every structural imbalance directly, she expanded her professional identity. That move diluted the control any single system could exert over her trajectory. Many Americans who built long careers understand this lesson intimately. Autonomy is rarely granted, it is accumulated. It comes through diversification, through recalibration, through the willingness to begin again in unfamiliar rooms. It requires accepting that control is incremental rather than absolute. Building sustainable careers demands another kind of strength, restraint. After the cultural peak of the 1960s, Michelle Phillips did not chase constant reinvention for attention's sake. She worked steadily. She allowed her musical legacy to remain intact while pursuing acting roles that extended her professional relevance. She aged in public view without being defined solely by nostalgia or by a single era. In a culture that often prizes visibility over durability, that approach is instructive. For viewers over 45, this arc may feel less like celebrity history and more like professional autobiography. There are seasons of rapid ascent. There are seasons of conflict. There are seasons of recalibration. The measure of a career is not whether it avoids tension, but whether it converts tension into long-term stability. A balanced perspective matters here. Michelle Phillips' path unfolded within the specific constraints of the 1960s and 1970s entertainment industry, a system shaped by gendered hierarchies, volatile creative partnerships, and shifting media landscapes. She navigated those realities as they existed. Her story does not present perfection. It presents persistence. And perhaps that is the point. Legacy, in its most meaningful form, is not about who dominated headlines the longest. It is about who sustained authorship over time, who remained present without surrendering entirely to external definition. If this deeper lens on career identity and autonomy resonates with your own professional journey, consider subscribing and continuing the conversation. Because the most enduring stories are not about fame alone, they are about how we learn to live with it, shape it, and outlast it.